Hi there, folks. How are you doing? I'm the Reverend Danny Crosby, Unitarian minister, serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the northwest of England. And I'm offering this devotion as a balm for the heart, for the mind, the spirit, and for the soul. And the title for today's reflection is Reconciling and Rebuilding, one heart, one stone at a time. So to begin, I invite us just to still ourselves. Let's invite a loving presence to be here amongst us and to awaken from deep, deep within us all. Know that you are accepted as you are. You are loved as you are this moment. Bring your whole self into this moment, to this time and space. Know that you are wanted, needed, and loved as you are, exactly as you are this moment. Awaken your being in the spirit of love, in the spirit of openness, in the spirit of reverence. In this time and in this space, may we revere God, revere life, revere one another, revere ourselves. Let's live with reverence for life itself, the greatest gift of all. May we find peace and rest, comfort and challenge. May we find meaning even in our deepest troubles. May we know that we are loved, accepted, and encouraged to be all that we were born to be, that this love wants us to be all that we can be. Know that you are loved and that you are wholly accepted as you are, exactly as you are in this moment, no matter who you are, no matter where you have been, no matter where you are going, that you are wanted, needed, and loved as you are, exactly as you are this moment. Know that the spirit that lives to set us free wants us to know that we are wanted, needed, and loved as we are, exactly as we are this moment. Amen. A very dear old good friend recently got back in touch with me. We haven't spoken for a few months actually. I'd had to distance myself from them due to some hurt that had been caused. They contacted me by way of apology. But it wasn't just that they wanted to say sorry. They were acknowledging where they had been wrong. They were admitting the harm they had caused, the hurt they had caused. They were attempting to heal something that had been broken, our friendship. Now, we've been through a lot together over the years, and I do understand that at the time my friend was struggling. It was obvious. And of course, I will meet up with them when the time is right. As I read my friend's message to me, what filled my heart with love, with joy, wasn't so much the apology itself. Anybody can say sorry. The key was in the fact that they could see where they had been wrong, where they had caused harm, and they wanted to rebuild something that's so precious, our friendship. And how can I stand in judgment, really? I am no saint myself. And the truth is, any friendship or any human relationship of any kind, really, requires many moments of forgiveness. Friendship, to quote David White, is a testament to forgiveness. Although sometimes, of course, things cannot be forgiven, things cannot be healed. Some things are beyond the pale. Some broken relationships cannot be healed as the damage done is too much. But other times it's just our pride that gets in the way. I know from experience of people in my life that folk can fall out, go into deep dispute for decades even. And you know what? They can't even remember sometimes what they fell out about in the first place. But pride stops them reconciling. Pride stops them turning back to one another and putting things right. Healing what was broken. Now, I don't believe that saying sorry takes much courage at all. I don't agree with Elton John. I think he's wrong when he sang, "Sorry seems to be the hardest thing." I don't think that's true at all. Anyone can say sorry, but it takes real faith and real courage to admit where you were wrong and to want to bring healing. It also takes real courage and faith to meet the other person halfway. So how could I refuse my friend? Quite the opposite, in fact. I couldn't refuse them. I rejoiced when I read their message on Monday morning. I rejoiced. Now, in our age, we often see public figures apologising, often for hurt caused. That said, this is just saying sorry, isn't it? It is not the same as honestly admitting fault and doing all that you can to make things right, to bring healing, to correct what was once wrong, to rebuild a relationship broken, perhaps even rebuild the world. I remember many years ago saying sorry to my grandma for causing harm, and I'll never forget the words she uttered back at me. "Why do you always say you are sorry when you don't really mean it?" You know, the words went right through me, deep into my soul. She loved me dearly, but could see I just felt bad about being caught out. I wasn't admitting fault or attempting to put right what was wrong. I was just trying to control the consequences. And I've never forgotten the lesson. Perhaps this is a lesson that politicians and public figures could do well to learn. It seems that just truly admitting fault and doing all you can to repair what is wrong, to correct the mistake, is not the way of such people. Never let them know you're wrong. I mean, some are taught this, aren't they? Never admit to being wrong. So saying sorry doesn't mean anything if you don't do anything, if you don't do what needs to be done to correct, to put right, to reconcile what was wrong. To admit fault, saying sorry is easy. To put right what was wrong it takes effort, it takes heart, it takes real courage, and it's to be admired. Now, as I've watched public events in recent times, you know what stories come to my heart and my mind. It's an ancient one, it's a really well-known one. That's the parable of the prodigal son, one of the great parables that Jesus taught in Luke's Gospel, chapter 15, verses 11 to 31. The parable has been tapping me right on my shoulder, knocking on my door, if you like. And it's a universal tale that speaks on so many levels about the blessings and troubles with forgiveness and reconciliation. You can look at it in 101, maybe 1,000 different ways. There are so many lessons here. Now, in the parable, there are three characters: a father and his two sons. The youngest son squanders his inheritance on a hedonistic lifestyle. He loses everything. In desperation, he sells himself into slavery, and due to a great famine, finds himself close to starvation. And it's at this point of utter despair and hopelessness that he remembers where he has come from. He remembers his father and reasons that even his father's slaves have a better life than him. So he returns home to throw himself on his father's mercy, not as his son, but as a slave. On hearing he is returning, his father rushes to meet him. Now, even before his son atones, his father does more than just simply forgive him. He kisses the boy. He kisses the boy. A beautiful touch of deep intimacy. And then as the son throws himself at his father's feet, he orders that the fatted calf be slaughtered and a huge party of much rejoicing be held. This is to celebrate the return of his son, who was once lost, but now is found. The parable of the prodigal son is a beautiful tale of redemption and forgiveness. But is it a realistic one? If only it was that easy, eh? Well, there's so much more to this story. There is another character who does not find forgiveness so easy to come by. There is the other brother who refuses to rejoice and celebrate the returning of his long-lost sibling. Quite the opposite, in fact. He is angry, he is indignant, he will not reconcile with his brother, and is now at odds with his father for doing so. In fact, he does not even refer to the prodigal as his own brother. Instead, he names him as this son of yours. And by doing so, he completely disowns his brother emotionally. There's no intimacy, there's no love. He tells his father all that he has done for him, and yet has received nothing in return for his good and virtuous life. His father pleads with him, and then he utters the immortal words, "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found." He tells his older son that all that is his belongs to him, and more than that, he reminds him that this brother of his has returned from the dead. He reminds him that he is his brother, and therefore he is a part of him. They were all three of them once bound together and now need to once again be reconciled. They need to rebind back together. And now this to me is the essence of religious living. For I have come to believe that reconciliation, rebinding together, is a deeply religious act. It's spirituality and community, if you like, not just the individual. Religion, one of the early understandings of the root of the word, it comes from the word religiare, which meaning to rebind. And I think one of the problems with some aspects of contemporary spirituality is that it's quite individualistic. It's not really about relationships with life and with other people. And to me, life, especially the truly spiritual, perhaps religious life, it's all about relationships. Isn't life all about that, really? Relationships with one another, relationships with life, relationships with our true self, and relationships with whatever it is that we believe is at the core of all life. Now, another thing, something else I've noticed about myself actually, and other people in my life and those that I observe and know, is that sometimes I struggle with forgiveness and reconciliation is not necessarily towards the wrongs done by others, but by our own shortcomings. That we struggle to reconcile ourselves with the whole of our humanity. We can't accept all that we are. And to begin to do so, we need to recognize that in each and every person, I think, again, this story again, exists all three characters that are portrayed in the parable of the prodigal son. There is the one who is returning, seeking forgiveness, the one offering forgiveness, offering love, the intimacy of the kiss, and the one who can feel rejected and neglected by this expression of deep, deep love. Reconciliation is a process and one that takes time. It is a long journey, but one that is certainly worth embarking upon. But it's far from easy. Although it's not easy, it is without a shadow of a doubt worth undertaking. If we begin this process of reconciliation in our lives, we can begin to rebuild our world. That's no easy task. If I've learned anything, though, it's that this rebuilding begins with forgiveness. And forgiveness is an easy word to speak, just as sorry is an easy word to say. But it's a difficult state to achieve. And to truly bring it about is no easy task. It's difficult. But I think reconciliation might be the purest act of love that any human being can engage in. Bring that healing. Thinking of Desmond Tutu, who died recently. So much of his life was about that, bringing that healing. The work he did in South Africa, a real example of this, actually. My kind of signature phrase, if you want, as a minister is, come as you are, exactly as you are, but do not expect to leave in exactly the same condition. And when I say this, I mean it. We need to bring our whole selves exactly as we are in this moment, but to always remain open to the possibility that change, that growth can occur, that we can reconcile ourselves, to one another, to the whole of life, and to whatever it is we believe is at the core of life. We can live spiritually alive in community with one another. We can live freely. We can live truly religiously. We can rebind back together that was broken. Simple, but not easy. Reconciliation is not easy. Let's not pretend that it is. And the reason that reconciliation is hard, especially with old hurts, is that when we engage in this journey of reconciliation, we bring painful feelings back up to the surface, and that's where we don't want to go. Forgiveness is actually an act of remembrance. In order to forgive, we have to truly re-feel all that has happened. We don't really forgive and forget. We forgive and we remember. What we actually do to truly forgive is remember, rebind the past to the present, and by doing so, we begin to reconcile. That's why I say that reconciliation is a deeply religious act, because we are rebinding back together what was torn apart, what was separated. We're bringing it back together. And by doing so, we begin to heal, to truly heal this world of ours, one relationship at a time. We rebuild the world one stone at a time, if you like, one heart at a time, if you like, one soul at a time, if you like. It's so easy to look at the world and just despair and say, I'm powerless. There's nothing I can do about this world. It's beyond. It's beyond. That said, if we look at our own hearts, in our own families, in our own communities, there is much that can be done. And perhaps if we begin here and reconcile ourselves with those closest to us, we might just start to rebuild the whole world again. I think sometimes the mistake is we focus on the big picture out there. We want to change the world, the whole world, begin large, and that's an impossible task. Most people give up before they begin. We lose sight of what is close at hand. Let's begin where we are, the ground at our feet, within ourselves and with those closest to us. We need to begin close at hand with the first step. Every journey begins with the first step. Well, healing and reconciliation begins with our closest relationships. Perhaps because that's something we can do something about. Brings to mind a rather wonderful story, The Map and the Man. It's taken from The Shortest Distance, 101 Stories from the World's Spiritual Traditions, by my great friend from Pontefract, the Reverend Bill Darlison. What a great man. Thanks for this, Bill. I've slightly altered one or two words, but that's all, so apologies if you don't like it. Only a couple. It was a particular rainy Saturday afternoon. Two children, John and Rebecca, were becoming increasingly bored, and their father, who was under strict orders to keep them entertained while their mother went shopping, was running out of ideas. He wanted to watch the sport on television and to read his newspaper. but the children had demanded his attention. He tried them with paper and coloured pencils, but this barely entertained them for 5 minutes. He tried the television, and they didn't even want to play on their tablets. They just didn't. It wasn't working. But there was still a couple of hours before Mother returned, and Dad wanted to chill out. Suddenly, he had an idea. Picking up a magazine from the table, he quickly flicked through the pages until he came to a map of the world. "Look at this, kids," he said. "I'm going to cut this map into pieces, a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. And if you can put it back together again, I'll take you both to McDonald's for tea. Is it a deal?" Well, the children agreed to give it a try. The father cut up the map, gave them a pot of glue, and set them to work on the kitchen table. He, in the meantime, put on the kettle, made himself a cup of tea, and sat down with his newspaper in the living room. He was feeling very pleased with himself. "It'll take them at least an hour," he thought with a smile. Well, barely 10 minutes later, he heard, "Finished, Dad!" Well, he couldn't believe it. He went through into the kitchen at the table, and there, sure enough, sitting on the table, was the completed map. "How on earth did you finish so quickly?" he asked. "Oh, it was easy," said John. "The map of the world was complicated, but on the other side, there was a picture of a man. We just put the man back together." "Yes," said Rebecca, "if you get the man right, the world takes care of itself." Yeah, real wisdom there, isn't there? If we get the man right, the world takes care of itself. It's like the wisdom of first things first, really. Start close in. I remember being taught many years ago by a wise old man, well, not that old, a wise man from Oldham. He told me, if you are spiritually well, the rest will take care of itself. Your job is to be spiritually well, and a large part of that is reconciling with those relationships in your life. You begin there, and those concentric circles of compassion move out, and we begin to heal the world. We do what we can with what we have, and it begins close in, at the ground at our feet, in our own hearts, our own minds, in our own communities, in our own families. Who knows where it leads? If you get the man right, the world takes care of itself. And if we do, we might just build that kingdom of love right here, right now. So it begins here in our own individual lives. It begins in our own hearts, and as we begin to reconcile ourselves with our whole lives. It begins with those who we have shared our lives with. It begins by focusing on the little picture. If we get that right, the bigger picture will begin to take care of itself. Remember, as the little girl in the story said, if you get the man right, the world takes care of itself. It begins with you. It begins with me. It begins by rebinding together, by returning to love and sealing it with a kiss. I'm going to end today's reflection with just a few words of blessing. We need to bless more. Do you know what? We can all bless. We begin to bless by giving our whole selves to life. So let's begin today. Let's give our whole selves to life. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the love of God surround you everywhere you may go. Go now in peace. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the love of God surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. And may we take that love with us. May we bless the world. May we seal it with a kiss. And may we do so in all that we feel, in all that we think, in all that we say, in all that we do. Go in love and peace.